Hello once again. I'm sure by now that you have touched on a few of the language intricacies, and hopefully you've learned a little bit about how to communicate in Spanish, learned a little more vocabulary and other verbs that will be helpful to you. But I wanted to spend a few moments just talking a little bit about some of the cultural differences, um, especially from the those of us in the Midwest of the United States. Um, we've been pretty isolated sometimes, or insulated, if you will, from other cultures. So I'd just like to talk about the Hispanic culture and what are some of the unique things about the various cultures. It's difficult to lump them all into one since we have over 20 countries in our world that speak Spanish. And so there's many different cultural influences depending on the country and their history. But I'm going to touch on a few points that will be helpful, I think, for you in your social ministry, whatever it may be, your pastoral ministry. First of all, the family is very, very important. And the extended family is always going to be first. Family is going to be first over jobs or anything else. Uh, the place, we've talked about the extended family before, the place of the padrinos, the godparents, how important they are. We need to remember that they are always included, that the mother has a special place in the home and also in the family, so she's always given a lot of respect and many times will help in some of the decision making. But she does expect the children to be obedient, well dressed, and she also expects them to take care of her in her old age, which sometimes in our culture is a little difficult to do. Um, they do the Spanish women do believe that appearance is important, so we know that they dress accordingly and are very conscious about having their hair and nails well done. So the hermanos, we've talked about the actual brothers and sisters in a nuclear family, but taking a little bit from our black culture, you will many times hear them, especially with our Mexican American friends, using the word mano or hermano for friends, male friends. So that's just so it's not always part of the extended family. It can be a friend, but that is something that we just need to be aware of. We've talked about, many people talk about the machismo, the authority figure, the somewhat arrogant attitude that we see sometimes with some of the Spanish-speaking men. Again, that one varies very much depending on the country that they come from and some of their family background. But we'll find, especially with some of the professional gentlemen who are, and see themselves as more culturally astute than many Americans, many from here in the United States, because many are at least bilingual and have professional degrees and are very proud of that. So, and then also we kind of have the old stereotypes of machismo that you see in some of the movies and in some of the gang information you see out there. So there is, and always there has been in the future, a very distinct stratification or very distinct kind of culture where there's been levels, if you will, or castes. So we'll still see that every now and then. The servant or the gardener doesn't get invited into the house for dinner or anything like that. Sometimes the Hispanic landlord can be pretty tough on the new immigrant, feeling that they're kind of below their level, that so they feel superior to those new immigrants, and there's can be some conflicts there that we just need to be aware of. We also know that elders, particularly elderly men, expect respect and compliments, and that's an important part of their culture. Another little piece that's always been interesting to me that with the guys is they like mustaches. That seems to be real popular, but it's to kind of show that they aren't Native American, they aren't indigenous, because many of the indigenous peoples don't have facial hair. So for them, that's kind of a badge of, I'm the better culture or whatever. So it's just kind of interesting that some of the little things that come up. Their past is very important to them. They have long and varied histories. We can talk, just for example, Spain governed Mexico for over 300 years. And so we have the mestizos, we understand the conquistadores that came in and took advantage of the women. And so we really kind of have a new race that has developed. Ancestry.com would have a heyday trying to figure out some of that. But there is a real sense, back in the days of the conquistadors, it was kind of a fatalistic type of a sense that, that's just the way it is type of thing. This is just what way life works. And, so rather fatalistic. So, but today there is a real dignity inherent in each person, and that's really important to them, to be able to have that sense of honor and respect. And as we can see today in our U.S., individualism has kind of run awry, and that takes over, kind of wins out over human dignity many times. So, but with the Spanish-speaking folks, it's still very, very important. But we do have. We think of Cinco de Mayo as a time to party, kind of their Independence Day, which it really isn't in Mexico. Their Independence Day is the 16th of September. That was independence from Spain. Now, Cinco de Mayo, or the 5th of May, is their independence from France, when Napoleon was trying to take over in that area of the world. So, but they do use that day to kind of recognize La Raza. The Catholic Church, who came in with the conquistadores, has given the people, especially mestizo people, a true place in our world and in our cosmos, by saying that we are all God's children, all belong to God's family. That kind of makes it, kind of equalizes everybody, and that really helped the lower caste and those who were, feeling really put down by the conquistadores and abused by them. That kind of put them in, able to come into the family, so that helped them, grow some self-respect, and so it has made a difference. And so the La Raza is an occasion to celebrate. As I said before, on respect, it's very important, that sense of honor. They see us many times, us meaning American, those from the United States, as more insensitive, uncomfortable talking about, spiritual selves or spiritual matters, where they have a real sense of self-respect and of principle. They're very spiritual people, and believe very much in how the whole world, the whole spiritual world, as well as the cosmos, as well as the everyday world, really all intersect and work together. So that's why one of the reasons that the Dia de los Muertos is so important to them. That is a time for them to go and celebrate with the deceased members of their family. They go to the cemeteries, they have parties, have good food, They set up altars in their homes to kind of commemorate and remember that they're still connected with the family and connected even though there's death may have separated them. For those bosses there in the United States, it's important to remember that it's more important to inspire loyalty to your employees. You're going to rather than the whole sense of like productivity and getting the job done on time. That's not as important until you've built that trust and built that loyalty in the workers, and you'd be more apt to get things done appropriately. As I said, truth is important to them, but there's also various types and dimensions of truth, and it can be open to interpretation, just like we do. Is that a little white lie, or is that a serious one, etc. So there can be some room for interpretation with that. With their families, they love to use superlatives to express themselves, and also diminutives with children, and it's a sign of affection. So abuelita is my little grandma, so it's a sign of of endearment. It's not just saying that she's a little short thing, it's saying that she's dear to us. So they enjoy sayings of various kinds and wordplay, which can be a little complicated. Sometimes they are using some of that information and we don't quite understand, but we also use a lot of idiomatic expressions and comparisons that don't always make sense to them either. Like it's raining cats and dogs. I've never figured that one out myself, but they can be very unsettling and puzzling for them on some of those, and some of their sayings can be a little foreign to us as well. They're much more interested in the overall ideas when they're talking about a topic rather than functioning and focusing on certain details. In a business conversation, it's always important that you get you start off with some personal talk. How's the family? How are you doing? But it's important to kind of preface any actual business with that. Otherwise, they just feel like we're so busy and so focused on detail in the business that we don't care about people. And so that's kind of something we need to be aware of. Makes any kind of a business meeting go much better if there's that initial contact and interest about something personal, especially the family. Here in the United States, especially with our neighbors to the south, we're hearing a lot more Spanglish, so don't be afraid to use it. Be careful with it, but realize that they will use it many times. They might say troque for their truck, or pick-up for the pickup. Those kinds of things that are just have worked their way into their language as well as ours. One of the things that, and we also have to be careful about listening so that we don't take things out of context. Now we know how important that is in any conversation, but especially with our Spanish-speaking friends, they can be in the middle of a conversation and it may kind of jump around a little bit, and we want to make sure that we aren't taking things out of context. Another one that is always interesting when I've taught, personal space. We're uncomfortable with close personal space, but the Latinos love it. I've literally walked up next to a student and watched them, pull away, just because of that uneasiness. Where with my Spanish speaking friends, it's no biggie, So they find us again cold, and if we aren't prepared to respond warmly, And again, what's appropriate, we need to learn depending on which culture, whether it's a little kiss on the cheek, whether it's a hug, whether it's a handshake. What is it that is proper for us to respond. So we just need to be careful with that, but also to be sensitive to that one as well. Time. They have a much older and more varied culture than ours, and it's more celebrated than ours. But for them, especially in the work world, time can be relative and often interrupted. As I said before, the family always comes first over job or any other activities. If there's something going on in the family, you need to get to a doctor or whatever it might be, they're going to take care of that. And if they're busy talking on the phone, they have an appointment, and talking to family or whoever, they may not make it to the appointment on time. So we just need to be aware that their time is relative, where we seem to be much more punctual, so that we're aware of that. I've made this mistake a few times, so I bring this one up. If they invite you to a party and they say it begins at 7, don't show up before 8. You can trust me on this. There have been a couple of times when I've forgotten whose party I was going to, and I showed up at the 7 o'clock hour, and of course nothing was set up. So what do other than to ask if I can set up for the party because I made that mistake. So just be careful there. Okay. As I said before, when in time, finishing a project isn't as important, meeting some of those deadlines. But they do like to make the boss happy, so sometimes they will, not quite have things done as well as we'd like, but they can say they met the time deadlines. But they really don't share our sense of time is money. So. Education is very important, but their school system is different from ours, and so we need to remember that and help communicate that. So when we talk about our school system, majority, particularly in Mexico, they have 6 years of primary school, 3 to 4 years of secondary school. Then they have what they call the preparatorio, or the preparatory school, and that's only for those who are college bound. Others will go on to a VOTEC, or go on out into the business world, whatever it might be. But and of course, for those who are college bound, the university, and that has become more and more important, just as it is in our country. But we need to be open to learning about their system and to kind of help communicate about our system and how it is different. One example that I've come across is, in their culture, kindergarten isn't a part of their educational system. They think of kindergarten more like daycare. So, right along with KinderCare and some of the other daycares around the country. So to make it clear to them that kindergarten is normally part of the school, and that the students need to be in kindergarten. Okay, so one of the most important things for us is just to remember that attitude of respect and of interest in the other person, their family, their work, their culture. This will take you a long way in communicating effectively and in learning about another fascinating culture and world. One other thing to remember, actually 2 last words here. Watch your hand gestures. Ask what's appropriate. Check out, for example, in our Spanish 1 book, pages 7 to 9. But in other cultures, some of our hand gestures are very offensive in their culture. So you want to make sure that you are aware of that and find that out, because those nonverbals are important. And the last thing, just to remember, there are 3 Americas in our world: North America, Central America, and South America. Mexico is part of North America, just like we are. So don't say we are Americans and they aren't, because we are all Americans. So I hope these few little tidbits will help you to become more aware, to have more questions you might answer and might ask people of the various cultures, just to show your interest and to show your sensitivity and your willingness to learn from them as they learn from us. Thank you.